On my dad's side, my grandfather and grandmother made a decision to move from Great Britain to India as the British royalty had their, not just their presence in India, but they had their political power, as it was one of their, the British Commonwealth, and actually still is. It's under the British Commonwealth of India. And so my grandfather was very involved in his career, and he was involved with a lot of people in the aristocratic crowd, and became a member of a aristocratic White Lodge in India. My grandmother was involved with the government side in the parliament. What I've been told, my dad's experience, and my uncle, who were born and grew up in India, and ultimately went to some schools on the border of Tibet as they were going up through their academy in grade school years. They became in contact with a very small group of very powerful people. And it was my grandfather's apron that was passed down to my father, which was passed down to me as part of that. And I did mention White Lodge, and people are going to kind of maybe wonder, who don't understand, that there are different colors. Here in the United States, we see a majority of everything is a blue lodge. There is some occasion for a black lodge. The Skull and Bones Temple is a black lodge of Freemasonry. But the White Lodge, in and of itself, is a lodge that holds all of the light within it. So if you were to break the spectrum of white light, you would see all the different colors. So they're given all of the information within the inner portico teachings. In the Blue Lodge here in the United States, they're only given a portion of that light. And it's through the degrees that you mentioned earlier. As people rise up in degrees, they're given more truth and less lies in regards to what they're actually involved in. Most men and women who get involved in the Blue Lodges here in the United States never get above the master. Very few get above the third degree. And it's really when you get into the 30th, 31st, 32nd, and 33rd, which is an honorary degree, the 33rd, that you start to understand at the core of it, it's Luciferianism. It's this idea of Prometheus bringing the light of knowledge to mankind. And unfortunately, there's different portions of horrendous occult activity taking place in some of the lodges. And you can hear some of the testimonies of people, especially young women, who have been brought into lodges and have been raped. Small children that have been brought into it as well. So here we see different colors representing different portions of what you can entertain. And within Freemasonry, there's the idea, it's kind of like the yin yang in the Far Eastern teaching, which I branded on my body years ago, because that was where I was headed, is the teaching of the Tao and spiritualism, and mixing that with metaphysics, the philosophy, understanding the base of things in general. And we see this balance between the good and the evil, the male and the female, the positive and the negative forces, the chi, which is required to keep things in balance. And so there are many within Freemasonry that at their inside, they're good people, and they're confused, or they're just completely deceived in regard to what they're caught up. And then there's a whole other side that are into the dark realm. And they're involved in some nefarious things and activities, impact many lives. And unfortunately, the ends justifies the means for them. And we know that the famous Freemason motto, order out of chaos, is something that they utilize to bring about change as necessary through the Hegelian dialectic process, which they've been using for hundreds and hundreds of years in order to entertain people on how they want to move forward and create history through their known changes.
To take us back to the White Lodge, Blue Lodge, Black Lodge real quick. So if someone were to be inducted into a White Lodge, they know from the ground up that it's a Luciferian, right?
Sure. Well, I don't know.
No.
I can't say that I've ever experienced a ritual for being brought into Freemasonry in a White Lodge or even a Blue Lodge. I never took that step. The Lord plucked me out before I made that decision.
Amen.
So there is some things that do take place in regards to death and resurrection, which we also see in the Christian faith. In baptism, you are immersed in death and you rise out of that and with a new creation. They have a similar thing. So there's a counterfeit for everything within God's government, and this government that has been set up by Satan. Lucifer is Satan. He is a fallen being, and many of the people that I came in contact with don't see him being represented properly, and that he's a misrepresented being is part of this pantheon of gods, because the idea through spiritualism, we see that this idea that you have a soul, and they believe that you have a living soul that is reincarnated at the time of a material death within the body. And that soul transcends either into another life or transcends into an esoteric body of light. And so at a young age, when I was doing transcendental meditation, it was my effort to meet these beings of light who I believed were dead ancestors that had reached this Mahatma or this enlightenment, that they didn't need a physical body anymore, that they became bodies of light, and that they were going to be working together with us, those who were in tune to their cosmic calling, to bring this world into what's called the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And that's the sign I was born under. And so I was being groomed to be part of this, bringing people into this enlightenment period that we're now entering into through their teachings. We're also going to see on the other side, there's a great reformation taking place with God's people, and many of them are waking up to the fact of what's really going on in the world today. So the White Lodge in and of itself, with my father and his uncle, they were brought up in a militant boarding school on the border of Tibet. So they spent nearly 9 months of the year in this boarding school that was, it was a Catholic school. It was run by the Franciscan friars, and it had the Jesuit teachings. But what they did was very interesting, my father had told me, was that they would make pilgrimages or homages over into Tibet to the great monasteries and visit some of these places where Sufism, which is the melting pot of all these mystic religions, was being practiced. And so they were being basically broken as young men, and then they were being recreated into this ability to receive these powers, these esoteric powers. So my dad shared with me on a number of occasions, they would go to these prayer temples, and there would be people levitating in full mantra positions. They're 40 feet off the ground. So there was this understanding is that you can see this, now you can become a part of it.